Well, look, it wasn't like we were doing anything illegal. Sometimes on our walks, Glimmer and I get a little amorous. This was technically our Valentine's Day, and we'd gone to the spring to watch the stars and have a picnic. So what if my clothes and my hair were a little rumpled? I don't kiss and tell, okay? And I won't go into details. But I had honestly expected Grandpa to be asleep by the time I got home. Glimmer was still a little flushed as we walked home, and I told her the story about the revelers that Grandpa had seen in the woods when he was younger. I know what you're thinking, and the answer is yes. I am so good at pillow talk. He said his grandmother called them moon revelers. Have you ever seen anything like them? Some of the flush had crept out of her cheeks as we spoke, and she nodded solemnly.
Yes, I know them. I have never seen one, but it's common knowledge to be careful when you hunt in the woods on a full moon. When I was little, my mother called them needle teeth and said they would come and get me if I was naughty. I have had more than one nightmare about the needle teeth since then.
Sounds like what he was talking about. I wonder why he didn't try to call you for help if he was trapped out there.
He would not have. Not then. Fisher and I were not on good terms then. We have fought over things, and we were not speaking.
She looked away when she said it, but she must have seen the question in my eyes, because she held up a hand.
I do not wish to talk about it. It was not a good time for Fisher and I. If he tells a story, then I may. But it's not of my business to tell.
We walked in silence for a little, our hands still linked, though it seemed the moment was ruined.
How is he? Fisher, I mean.
He's okay, I said, looking away too, as I lied.
His cough was very bad the other day. It has gotten worse since New Year's as well.
I squeezed her hand gently. I'm sure he'll be fine once it gets warm again. He seems to get a little sick when it gets cold. Glimmer nodded as the porch came into view.
I hope so. I am not ready to be without him. He has only just come back into my life, and he has brought you with him, for which I am very grateful.
She kissed me again, though not quite as passionately as she had in the woods earlier. I tried not to dwell on that either, or we might soon be reenacting some of that in the backyard. Will I see you tomorrow? I asked her, breaking the kiss after some time. She shook her head.
I must go with the hunters. It is nearly time for our spring fest, and I must secure the meat for the table. You will come to the spring fest, I would hope. The queen herself has offered you a personal invitation.
Can't very well not, then. Let me know when, and maybe I can even bring Gramps with me. I know he'd love to see the Moon Elf camp.
He would be most welcome. I will see you when I return, my love. Stay safe and look after Fisher. I want him to see the Moon Elves as much as you do.
She pressed another kiss on me before stepping away, disappearing into the woods and melting away like fog from a pond. When I came through the back door, setting down my shoes as quietly as I could, I tried my best to slink up the stairs. Apparently, I wasn't as quiet as I thought. How'd your date go, lover boy? I stopped, mid-slink like a cartoon character, turning back to the living room where Grandpa was sitting and reading. It's past 11, Gramps. You should be in bed. Sleep doesn't come as easy as it once did, kid. Sometimes I sit up after you've turned in. Sometimes I wake up before you do, but at my age, I don't need as much sleep as I used to. I sat down in the chair beside him, the one my grandmother had always sat in, and caught Grandpa looking at my neck before I could pull the collar of my coat up a little. Looks like the mosquitoes are early this year. "They really did a number on you, boy," he said with a wink. "Yeah, it was certainly something," I said, hedging. "Last time I saw a bite like that was when I had an unexpected guest in the cab while I was truck driving." I laughed. "Let me find out. You've been contributing to lot lizards, Gramps." He smiled. No. I had offers, but I never strayed from your grandma. This lady, however, was a little more persistent than most, and turned out to be a little more dangerous, too." "Sounds like another grandpa story," I said, sitting back comfy. "Sounds like it, and it takes place in the most wholesome place of all, Nashville, Tennessee. I was running a load of fertilizer up to Nashville when it happened. I'd never been to Nashville, and I got a little distracted seeing the sights while I was there. It's an interesting place, and as they unloaded my truck, I took in the town. I had a nice lunch. I saw some famous places. I listened to some up-and-comers on the street, and when I checked my watch, I realized it was already 6 p.m. I rushed back to the lot to get my truck, and I managed to catch it just as they were chaining the gate up and heading home. They laughed, saying it happened a lot, and let me pull my truck out so I could head home. I had an 8-hour drive ahead of me, and I wanted to get back to the yard and home before morning. 4 hours into my drive, however, I suddenly got very tired. I don't mean my eyes got heavy or I got the yawns either. I mean, all of a sudden, I was irrationally tired. I was holding a cup of coffee when it happened, too. Had just finished one a couple of minutes before, but I was suddenly unable to keep my eyes open. Luckily, there was a truck stop up the way. I had just thought as much as I passed the advert sign, so I pulled in and hunted for a payphone so I could call home. Your grandmother picked up on the 4th ring and immediately asked me how late I was going to be. She didn't sound mad. She was used to it by now, and I told her I'd be about 8 at the earliest. She said that wasn't too bad, and to make sure Marvin paid me up front because the washer was on the fritz. I asked her what was wrong with the creek, and she hung up on me, but she did it kindly. I visited the bathroom and took a sink bath, got some of the sweaty smell off of me, and went to catch a couple hours of sleep in the sleeper cab so I could get rolling again. "Hey, handsome," someone called as I came out of the bathroom. "Need some company?" I turned around, expecting to find a woman in a little skirt looking for work, but my hackles immediately went up. She was wearing a dress, something long and flowery, and her hair was long and went almost to the ground. She was pale, too, and her teeth were far too bright in the moonlight. She was beautiful, too good-looking to be out here trolling for a trucker change, and I felt an immediate desire roll over me like a wave. I wanted her, I discovered, in a way I hadn't wanted anyone since I married your grandmother. She was more than beautiful. She was desirable, and that should have raised a red flag almost at once. "No," I stammered, walking shakily back to my truck. "No, thank you, ma'am. I'm a married man," I said, trying to regain my steel and put some distance between her and me. "You wouldn't be the first, sugar," she said, "but that's okay. I'm sure I'll see you later." I hurried back to my truck and locked the door. I was a little shaken by her forwardness, but I was safe now. So's I thought. I checked the doors, I snuggled down in the sleeper cab and tried to think sleepy thoughts. It wasn't hard, but every time I would almost doze off, I would hear the woman's voice as she called to some new potential client. "Need some company, sugar?" I rolled over, trying to get comfy. "Hey, handsome, how about a date?" There should have been no way I could hear her, but I could. "Oh, boys, I'll keep you company if you want." As I finally dozed off, I heard her voice still, like it was wafting over me. Married men, widowed men, boys, old-timers with one foot in the grave, young men going off to war, young men going off to whore. It makes no difference to me. I couldn't be sure if I was dreaming or not, but suddenly I opened my eyes and there she was. She was standing over my bed. Her dress was gone. In the dark, however, her features were like cold tar. She possessed galaxies within that sludge, and her features were only the vaguest of shapes, like some pagan idol carved from rough wood with crude tools and impractical hands. I take them, and I ride them, and I suck them dry. As she said it, she was suddenly upon me. Her body balanced over top of me, and she was indeed riding me, not to be too graphic. She leaned down and pressed her mouth to my neck, suckling there as she made me warm. I groaned softly, feeling a new level of tiredness fall over me. She made some rough approximation of love to me. I became aware that this was no dream. It was slow in coming, like a man swimming through molasses, but when I surfaced, her glamour was suddenly broken. Gone was the beautiful woman I had desired, and in its place was a haggard crone. Not even a crone. That would have been better. This was a corpse of a crone, animated, brought back from the brink. Her swinging dugs seemed in constant threat of coming loose, and her body was hunched and wrinkled in the extreme. Her flowing hair was brittle and coarse, her body dry as an old stick, and she looked at me with her half-mad eyes, and I realized what had hold of me. Grandma, you see, had warned me about these sorts of spirits, but it had still nearly gotten me while I was unaware. I looked back into those eyes and realized she had seen that I was aware, and that I had seen her. "It matters not," she whispered, groaning and moving against me. "I have you right where I want you. You are mine." Her hands began to creep towards my throat, and as her icy fingers encircled my neck, I crept my own hand up and under my shirt. Her hands were like ice cubes, but they were as strong as iron. They were cutting off my air, choking me to death, but as the leather thong snapped and I pulled out my cross, I felt them falter. "Get behind me, demon! You have no power here!" I gasped out, my air slow to return to me. "I put you from this place in Jesus' name!" The woman screamed, flying against the back wall of the sleeper cab like a leaf in a windstorm. She crouched there, panting, her eyes wide in disbelief. She had clearly not expected me to know what she was or how to rid myself of her, but I was no fool. I brandished my cross, mumbling pseudo-Latin for good measure, and finished my push as I made ready for one more press. I banish you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Be gone, boo-hag! I screamed. She screamed. But it didn't last long. She shriveled to nothing, her body dissolving before my eyes. And as quickly as she had appeared, she was gone. I found, as I sat there breathing, that I was not as tired as I thought I was. I surprised your grandmother that morning by rolling in before 6 a.m., and when she asked me about the marks on my neck, I told her some crazy lady had tried to kiss me at the truck stop when I went to use the phone. I pushed her off and drove away so she wouldn't bother me. It wasn't technically a lie, and she seemed content enough with it. I checked into it, and the boo-hag never bothered anyone around that truck stop again. That particular stop had a bad reputation for missing truckers and bodies found the next day after a supposed heart attack. But after my encounter with the creature, the attacks stopped. I can't prove it. This was before the internet, but I think I either banished her or put her off her hunting ground for good. I felt a little cold as I sat there listening to how Grandpa had almost been gotten by something nasty. That's an interesting story, but you could have just told me that you picked up some strange on the road, and I wouldn't have questioned it. Grandpa snorted. I had offers. I wasn't an ugly guy, but no, I was always loyal to your grandma and my family, and I always will be. I smiled. Good luck for me, I suppose. Good luck for all of us, Grandpa said sleepily, closing his book and heading off to bed. Good night, kid. Night, Gramps, I said, quietly sitting in the dark and trying not to picture some shrunken woman looking at me through the window as I hunkered with my thoughts.